Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. This past weekend in Argentina at the legendary Luna Park, the site of many legendary and meaningful fights in the Argentinian boxing scene, Uruguay's Maira Moneo
dominated veteran journeywoman Lisbeth Crespo in defense of what is her WBC interim lightweight title. Lightweight, that's where Katie Taylor still reigns as that division's undisputed champion, though I'd wager not for long. Because Katie Taylor may be running it back with Chantel Cameron, because there may be a trilogy, and because that trilogy might be happening at 140 pounds, the same weight that the first two fights happened in, it's conceivable that one or some of Katie's belts may go vacant, and the WBC title, along with the WBO, might be one or two among them.
Maira Moneo of Uruguay is in the queue to either challenge Katie Taylor for the green belt or become WBC champion should Katie vacate it. And Maira Moneo is one to watch, one to keep your eye on, a slugger, a real mid-range to inside scrapper, an artillery fighter, a volume puncher.
A spiteful one that likes to fight, likes to trade.
I often consider the unsung heroes in the sport of boxing, the scrappers and the brawlers, the fighters that don't necessarily have the most polished styles and don't come from the most highly touted amateur backgrounds. They're not necessarily Olympians, but they are fighters.
Not coming to play with you to fiddle and fence with the jabs and make it a fight of finesse. No, they're coming to fight, and they're gonna push you. They're gonna fight you. Maira Moneo just so happens to be one of those kinds of fighters, a physical fighter, a mid-range to inside puncher.
Sporting a professional record of 14 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 15 professional bouts, and that lone defeat, that 1 loss, I don't even consider it a loss myself, but it's recorded. What that really is a DQ, a disqualification in the Yanina Lescano fight way back there in 2020, about 2 or 3 years ago.
It was due to a clash of heads that opened up a cut on Yanina Lescano, who was rendered unable to continue, and as a result, Maira was disqualified. But you have to figure that a mid-range to inside fighter, a phone booth fighter like Maira, well, there are going to be clashes of heads.
I don't think of it as being deliberate. I think of it as being a byproduct of how she fights, leaning in and leading with her face, not dissimilar from what we see in Katie Taylor's fights, mid-range to inside.
I don't actually think she does it on purpose. It's just a byproduct of how she fights. They're head clashes, not headbutts.
Maira Moneo, who was very busy in the previous year, having fought 4 times last year and 2 times this one, successfully defending her WBC interim title against Lisbeth Crespo in Argentina this past weekend. She remains in the queue as one of Katie Taylor's mandatory challengers, and the question is, will Katie Taylor get around to fighting her? If she did, not that I think she's going to, that would be a fan-friendly fight, a phone booth fight, and an all-out war. But Maira, she's about 6 years younger than Katie. Maira's 31, whereas Katie's 37.
What do you think Katie's not going to fight her?
I'm certainly not implying that Katie's going to avoid a fight with anyone, but at 37 years old, I do feel like Katie has a preference to what fights she's going to be in moving forward. I feel like she wants the big fights, the big names, and that's not Maira. That's not Maira Moneo. Hell, I don't even know that Katie will return to the lightweight division.
She just became undisputed champion at 140 pounds, and they're talking about doing a trilogy with Chantel, so Katie may stay up there for what remains of her career.
Relevance of the story isn't necessarily Maira fighting Katie. I don't get the sense that Maira is going to fight Katie. The relevance of the story is she's in the queue to become WBC champion if Katie drops that belt. And she may not be as talked about or highly touted as an amateur standout like Caroline Dubois, but she is a force to be reckoned with. And contrary to what her record suggests, she's got power. The issue is she smothers her own work. She's so close to the other girl, playing her close to the chest, she doesn't give herself enough room to optimize her power. But she ain't pillow-fisted. She's got pop.
She can punch. She just doesn't give herself enough room to really drive the shot because she's a scrapper, because she's a brawler. That's what makes her so dangerous, so formidable. And she's got an engine that she can throw punches and bunches from the opening round to the final round. That makes those finesse fighting kind of fighters that
pure boxers, polished boxers. They don't like close quarters fighters like a Maira Moneo. Volume punchers, that takes them out of their comfort zone, and that's what I'm talking about. These aren't always the most highly touted fighters or talked about as the most skilled, but they are formidable.
Maira Moneo is formidable, and she's definitely one to watch out for at 135 pounds, that in the next 12 months, she could become a major player at the weight.
Congratulations to her for successfully defending her WBC interim title this past weekend, thereby staying in the queue to either challenge Katie Taylor or become WBC champion down the line.
Should the title go vacant.
Fimo, Lopez, that was another fight that's been spoken
Es un cobarde. Si él es hombre, él va a aceptar la pelea. O sea, él dice que él me invitó a pelear. En realidad no fue así. Simplemente él lo hizo porque sabe que yo vengo de una pelea y no tengo la preparación suficiente para pelear con él. Pero si él es hombre y él quiere pelear conmigo como él dice, acepta la para abrir.
He's a coward. You know, he says that, you know, he's offered to fight me, and he knows the reason why he's made that offer is because I've just recently fought, and I won't be ready and prepared for that fight. If he's a man and he's a man of his word, then he will take the fight with me.
Are you disappointed that there's been...
Y el papá, que no hable tanta mierda, brother. No hables mierda, viejo loco. Por eso es lo que usted es, un loco. Diga las cosas como son. Él no quiere pelear conmigo. Si él quiere pelear, que pelee en junio, abril, a finales de marzo, para que tú veas que él es un cobarde. Yo lo voy a demostrar.
And the message for his dad: stop talking so much shit. You know, if he wants to fight me, he can fight me. You know, there's dates there. There's April, March. If he wants to face me, stop being a coward. Stop talking shit, and make sure that he'll face me.
It looks like he's going to be involved in another fight. Is it overall just quite disappointing for you that it's not going to be your next?
Parece que va a aceptar otra pelea.
That is reigning IBF super lightweight champion Subriel Matias of Puerto Rico saying that Fimo Lopez's supposed offer for them to fight early next year was not made in good faith. He's calling bullshit. He's saying that offer wasn't made in good faith. It was made on the predication that the Lopez people knew he was injured. They knew he wouldn't be able to fight, but if he really wants to fight, they can schedule it for either April or June. And rumor has it that Fimo Lopez is already en route to fight someone else. He's en route to fight Jermaine Ortiz, who gave Vasil Lomachenko all he could handle not that long ago. Subriel doesn't believe these guys. He's saying that Fimo is a coward and his father's full of shit and he needs to stop talking so much. What do I think?
Well, I don't want to be the one to cast an air of doubt over Fimo's offer or his real intentions. Then again, I'm not the one doing that. Subriel is doing that.
He's the one calling bullshit. I initially heard this rumor last week, but here we have confirmation from the man himself in his own words. The only reason they made that offer was because they knew he wouldn't be able to fight, because he's injured. Not that long ago, Fimo Lopez, in his own words, claimed that he had just rejected an offer to fight Ryan Garcia. And it is a little hard to reconcile, a little hard to digest, that you're gonna turn down an offer to fight Ryan Garcia in a bigger fight than this one would be, so you can fight in this fight early next year.
You turned down Ryan for Subriel. I believe it was Dan Canobio and former champion Chris Algieri that said it best. That even if the money for the Ryan Garcia fight wasn't everything you wanted it to be, it's still a winnable fight. It's still
gonna make a lot of money. If the number isn't the exact number that you want, it's a number that's for a very winnable fight. A much less risky fight than this one would be. So when we see that Fimo, in his own words, he says he turned down Ryan and they offered this guy the fight, that's what they're saying. This guy's saying those guys are full of shit.
And look, those guys already have another opponent lined up. Rumor has it that Fimo may be facing Jermaine Ortiz in early February. On that schedule, if he takes care of business against Ortiz, there's still plenty of time to schedule the fight with Subriel for June. I don't really see what the problem is.
Barring unforeseen circumstances, illness, or injury, Fimo would have most of February and all of March to recuperate, and then he could start camp in April, May, going into June. to prepare for the Matias fight, so I don't really see what the problem is, that if they really want that fight, they can still do it.
And Teofimo only fought once this year anyway. The Josh Taylor fight, he needs to be busier.
Only fight he's had is the Josh Taylor fight way back there in June. That's the only fight he had this entire calendar year. A fight between Teofimo and Subriel would pit the boxer-puncher, the counter-puncher, versus the pressure fighter, the pressure guy. And the majority of the time, that stylistic matchup favors the counter-puncher, because a guy who's going to stand right in front of them, letting punches go, is going to give that counter-puncher all the opportunities they need to get those counters off, those hard punches.
Usually happens when a boxer-puncher faces a pressure fighter is what you saw in the Jaron Ennis fight versus Roman Villa, the Canelo Alvarez fight versus Alfredo Angulo,
Golovkin versus Lemieux. The majority of the time, that's how those stylistic matchups play out. Does favor the boxer-puncher. The majority of the time, though not all the time. This past weekend, we saw Jade Green, a skilled boxer-puncher, a strong counter-puncher, in there with a pressure fighter in Franchon Cruz, and you saw what happened. The come-forward momentum and volume punching of Franchon overwhelmed.
I'm gonna say that it's rare, but it happens.
And it happened this past weekend that in very rare instances, that pressure fighter is throwing so much, so fast, that boxer-puncher, that counter-puncher, that they can't quite deal. They can't get their timing down, and they can't get their counters off. Counter-puncher's finer qualities are being neutralized by the overwhelming aggression and activity of that pressure fighter. Like I said, it doesn't usually happen that way, but in rare instances...
So you're saying you think that could happen to Teofimo?
If the boxer-puncher, the counter-puncher, should for any reason become squirrely and hesitant, and they can't get that pressure fighter's timing down when they're closing the distance, if there's anything about that pressure fighter that is eliciting a little bit too much respect from that boxer-puncher, like what we saw this past weekend with Franchon and Jadeja.
Boxer-puncher could get beat. Now, is there anything about Subriel that we need to consider? Is there anything that Subriel has that might elicit a lot of respect from Teofimo? And I think there is. I think Subriel would be the strongest puncher he's ever faced. Not the most decorated fighter.
Because he isn't. Subriel would not be the most decorated fighter Teofimo has ever fought. Vasyl Lomachenko and Josh Taylor, those are bigger scalps on paper than Subriel, though not bigger punchers than Subriel.
Subriel's work rate, in tandem with his power, could create a situation where maybe Teofimo gives him too much respect. Enough, he's not getting the counters off, and there's nothing to stop Subriel from coming forward.
They said it's rare, but it happens. The majority of the time, boxer punches beat pressure fighters the majority of the time, but not all the time. There are always exceptions to the rule. Could this be one of them? Young Teofimo Lopez seems a more dynamic fighter to me than Subriel. More athletic, faster on his feet with faster hands, and strong. Perhaps not as strong as Subriel, but strong enough that you can consider him a puncher. Whereas Subriel...
Not as layered. Style is a bit more simple and easy to understand. That doesn't mean it's easy to work around. For what is a naturally smaller, stumpier fighter...
The genuine question there. Teofimo might have the right style for the job, but does he have the right durability? Does he have the right power? Can he back this guy off? Because if he can't, he's in a world of hurt. It's neither here nor there, because he's got to face Jermaine Ortiz first in February. That's the story. And there is some banana skin energy associated with that fight, so we'll see what happens. Finally, just in keeping with the theme of news at or around these weights, Leonard Ellerbe gave his 2 cents on a potential Devin Haney versus Gervonta Davis fight in Saudi Arabia on their dime. Leonard said, one thing's for sure. If Tank decides he wants to fight in Saudi, Tank will deal directly, and he damn sure won't have anything to do with it, he being Eddie Hearn. Just like he tried to insert himself in the Ryan Garcia fight. You see how that played out.
When did Eddie Hearn try to insert himself in the Ryan Garcia fight? I think he was asked about it and he gave his thoughts, but Ryan isn't his fighter and we know Gervonta isn't.
And the difference between that situation and this one is that Eddie Hearn has represented Devin Haney in the past. He just promoted his last fight. That was a matchroom show. The story is he may have options on Devin Haney for at least one more fight. In that situation, if Devin Haney requested that Eddie Hearn negotiate things on his behalf or just anything to that extent, he would have a reason to be there. But Leonard Ellerbe continued, also, if Tank and Haney fight, the offer will come from Tank on his terms. and it will be made directly to them, and he won't have anything to do with it. That's for sure.
So in other words, it's what I told you in my previous video. Gervonta Davis is neither making offers for a fight or taking offers for a fight, because Leonard doesn't sound at all pleased with the idea that Gervonta Davis might box in Saudi Arabia.
Why should that be an issue, you ask? The Saudis' money is good enough for Deontay Wilder, who used to box on the PBC side of things. It's good enough for Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, all of these very big names that make bigger money than Gervonta Davis does. They're still patting themselves on the back for the success of the Ryan Garcia fight.
As if Gervonta has a bunch of other fights like that lying around at his disposal. You're not going to do a million buys with Rayo or Isaac or any of those fighters on your side of things. You're not. You're not going to do a million. You're not going to do $500,000.
We know that the Saudis are willing to pay well in excess of a fight's marquee value, its market value, to bring it to their region of the world. So what could be Leonard's issue, and why is Leonard chiming in anyway? You don't promote Gervonta Davis no more. You're with Mayweather Promotions, and he reportedly left them some months ago. In any event, what Leonard's issue might be is that even though the Saudis are willing to pay more for a fight than anybody else, they do seem to reserve the right to name a pay-per-view's distributor. They leave that decision to themselves at their own discretion, since said fight would be happening on their dime. So if they decide that they'd want Haney versus Davis to happen on the DAZN platform instead of Amazon, well, I don't think that Leonard Ellerbe and the people at the PBC would like that too much. In tandem with Gervonta Davis wanting to impose weight stipulations on Devin Haney.
To make matters worse, they're not going to negotiate a fight on even terms and have it on even terrain. They want everything in their favor.
Even if there is an obscene dollar amount attached to a fight that, hey, fighting Devin at 140 might get you $20 million.
If you try to stick weight stipulations on him, he's not going to go for it, and the fight dies.
Usually, in negotiating a fight between two decent-sized names, the biggest hurdle is agreeing to the money. Well, the Saudis have so much money, they can make virtually any fight happen, if all it's about is the money. Though if you're insistent on weight stipulations, that makes the fight that much more difficult to negotiate.
I told you, they're hiding behind those weight stipulations. They're hiding behind them because they know Devin Haney won't go for that, and when he doesn't, that gives them an excuse not to fight him.
What it's about, it's not about negotiating a fight, it's about getting Devin to leave Gervonta alone.
Using weight stipulations to do it.
Huh?